Welcome to episode 65 of The 5-Minute Investor, the podcast where we break down stocks at the heart of two stories shaping your investing week. I'm Trevor Abbas.
And I'm Jonathan Brown. Each week, we bring one stock, one headline, and one reason investors should care.
This week, with Trulieve set to become the first U.S.-listed cannabis company on the NYSE on Wednesday, and the Trump administration finalizing an order in April to reclassify medical marijuana from a Schedule I drug, think heroin and LSD, to a Schedule III drug, think more common medications like codeine and steroids, the time is right to profile a pair of cannabis businesses with strong financial track records that bode well in terms of future shareholder value.
Turn up the volume on this one. Decibel Cannabis Company, ticker DB on the TSXV Venture Exchange and DBCCF on the OTC markets in the U.S., holds a market cap of $63 million Canadian. Decibel is a consumer/medical-focused cannabis company that holds several brands, is expanding its international operations, and has a deep footprint spanning cultivation, processing, and certified production facilities.
Okay, we're talking financial performance this week, so what's the story here, John?
Oh, Trevor, Decibel reported a strong start to the year with first quarter net revenue of 29.8 million Canadian, up 41% year over year, driven largely by surging international demand and solid domestic product launches. International sales, let's get the numbers up here, they were a standout at 9.6 million Canadian. That's soaring 330% year over year, while domestic sales grew more modestly at 7% to 20.3 million Canadian, supported by new product traction and gains from the standard issue brand. Profitability also improved, with adjusted EBITDA doubling to nearly 7 million Canadian dollars and gross margins holding steady at 51%, reflecting efficient operations and the growing contribution from higher margin international markets. However, there is some static to report. Despite strong operating performance, free cash flow took a $14 million hit, mainly due to a one-time 13.2 million Canadian debt refinancing related to payment rather than ongoing business weakness. Maybe a good sign. Adjusted net income reached 3 million Canadian, an improvement of 3.2 million year over year.
A nice picture in the rear view for sure, but what about Decibel's road ahead?
Seems like clear conditions. Looking ahead, the company expects Q2 revenue of 33 to 35 million Canadian dollars. That's about 14% growth at the midpoint, and reaffirmed its full year 2026 guideline of 130 to 135 million Canadian in revenue and 27 to 31 million in adjusted EBITDA. A sign of confidence in continued growth momentum, I think.
Okay, one last one for you, John. We see cannabis stock values constantly misaligned with their underlying businesses. With that in mind, how has Decibel stock performed?
That's true. DB stock has dipped about 4.5% this year since the start, but compared to where we were this time last year, the stock is actually sitting 40% higher. This could be seen as a buying opportunity, and the story is the same when we look at the company's OTC performance south of the border. So I've noticed that since a February rally earlier this year where the company announced that it had consolidated some of the elements of its business, DB stock has traded between 10 to 15 cents. The OTC stock has swung between 7 to 10 cents in that time. So now, let's turn our focus to another major player in this space, one that's celebrating record annual revenue, always good news. And that's where we can see a somewhat different growth story unfolding.
That's right, John. My cannabis stock painting an increasingly attractive financial picture is Aurora Cannabis, ticker ACB on the TSX and the NASDAQ, a global medical cannabis leader active in the Canadian, European, Australian, and New Zealand markets that, along with Canopy Growers and Tilray, stands as one of the pioneers of the Canadian cannabis industry.
What does Aurora's value proposition sound like today, though? Set the scene.
Over the past few years, as competition in the Canadian cannabis industry grew exponentially and margins thinned out, Aurora, like most companies, felt the squeeze, falling from a market cap of more than 12 billion Canadian in 2019 to a mere 271 million today, despite boasting an unmatched global footprint, signaling a mismatch between operational strength and market perception.
I like what I'm hearing, but we got a little more time in this 5-minute investor. I need some more. Tell me more.
Well, when we look closer at Aurora's business, we find that revenue has actually increased from 221 million in 2022 to a record 320 million in fiscal 2026, with adjusted EBITDA growing every year from a $123 million loss to a record $53 million gain, respectively. Tracing a clear path of improving financial performance, any reasonable investor would expect to match up with the stock price.
Hmm. I'm going to flip a question that you asked me earlier. Do you see any correspondence between Aurora and its stock price, in your opinion, or have they been at odds?
It's the latter, definitely the latter, as investors have suffered a more than 90% loss since January 2022, which runs exactly counter to the business's healthier prospects with each passing year from a top line and cash flow perspective.
So nobody's got access to a crystal ball, of course, but what do you think it'll take to align investor sentiment with solid cannabis businesses like Decibel and Aurora in the future?
US legalization, I think, is the obvious blind spot in every cannabis company's outlook, as federal legalization holds the potential to usher the country from its current global leadership position in terms of legal sales at about 30 billion US in 2025 to a truly untouchable one. Until then, companies will have to continue differentiating themselves and fighting for limited profits in smaller legal markets like Canada and select European countries whose growth prospects are but a fraction of what the US is capable of.
As always, you can find links to the articles from today's episode in the show notes and more investing insights on stockhouse.com.
And you can find the 5-Minute Investor on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Stockhouse, or wherever finer podcasts are found. This podcast is produced in partnership with Decibel Cannabis Company, Inc. and Aurora Cannabis, Inc., and is intended for informational purposes only. For full disclaimer information, please visit stockhouse.com/legal/disclaimer.